Number 7, Nicky Wagner. Chris Ockenvoll on behalf of Nicky Wagner. Order. I've called Chris Ockenvoll.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of Nicky Wagner to the Minister for the Environment, what changes has the government made under the Canterbury Earthquake Response and Recovery Act to facilitate recovery and the processing of resource consents to enable Christchurch to rebuild as quickly as possible?
The Honourable Dr. Nick Smith.
Mr. Speaker, changes adopted yesterday will enable land remediation work to progress far more quickly. This is essential as before houses can be rebuilt and permanent infrastructure like roads, footpaths, sewage and water can be built in some areas, that land where it has been liquefied during the earthquake needs to be remediated. Every day involved in the processing of consents for this work is a day longer that families are displaced, and a day longer that families are without basic services. That is why such a high priority for the government is to have efficient processes so that this work can start as soon as possible. The first consent application for this work is expected next week.
Chris
Speaker,
Ockenvoll.
supplementary on behalf of Nicky Wagner to the Minister. How long could it take to get resource consents for the land remediation works if the government did not use the Order in Council mechanism of the Canterbury Earthquake Response and Recovery Act?
Honourable Dr. Nick Smith.
There's no provision in the district or regional plans in Canterbury for construction of stone piles or the consolidation works that is needed to repair these now large areas that were subject to severe liquefaction. So the comments would need to be notified, they would be subject to full public hearings, and they would be subject to appeals to the Environment Court. This could take anything from a minimum of 3 months to as long as 2 or 3 years. The streamlined process that the government has approved will allow written submissions by affected parties and a decision can be made within a fortnight.
Chris Ockenvoll.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the Minister on behalf of Nicky Wagner, what is the purpose of the other order in Council passed yesterday in respect of the Resource Management Act for temporary accommodation and work depots?
Honourable Dr. Nick Smith.
Normally resource consents would be required for erecting temporary accommodation and for establishing works depots, of which a large number are going to be required in Christchurch. The changes we have made enable councils and the Department of Building and Housing to erect temporary buildings like site offices, temporary accommodation and storage facilities to assist the earthquake reconstruction work. Landowners' permission will still be required, but this will enable reserves, the margins on the area of roads and other areas to be quickly utilised for the essential temporary infrastructure that is going to be required to support Christchurch's rebuild.
Charles Chauvel.
My question asks, can the Minister assure the House that past changes made under the Canterbury Earthquake Response and Recovery Act have not contributed to an increased rate of death or serious injury in the February 22nd earthquake?
The Honourable Dr. Nick Smith.
Speaker, it's too early to speculate on the cause of death of the estimated 200 victims of the Christchurch earthquake, but I would note that a number were killed by older buildings that would not meet a modern earthquake standard. The provisions by which those buildings can be removed are complex, and it is possible that there are some buildings that should have been removed after the 4th of September earthquake contributed to the loss of life on the 22nd of February.
Charles Chauvel.
Is the Minister aware of concerns around the consistency and accuracy of the use of the green, red and yellow card system under the Canterbury Earthquake Building Act order? Is he further aware that both the PGG Wrightson and the Canterbury TV building both received green cards under the provisions of that emergency order? And does he accept that real care is needed when the wide powers available under the emergency legislation are used?
The Honourable Dr. Nick Smith.
Mr. Speaker, the member's question goes beyond my responsibilities as responsibility for the Resource Management Act and the Environment provisions, but I would note that the Prime Minister has stated that there will be a full inquiry into the reasons for the collapse of the CTV building and the PGC building, and as an engineer I would urge people to await the proper process for establishing the cause of collapse and death before drawing simplistic conclusions.
Charles Chauvel.
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
Point of order.
Mr Speaker, the primary question addressed to the Minister asked the Minister to speak on behalf of the Government in respect of the Canterbury Earthquake Response and Recovery Act and orders made thereunder to facilitate recovery. The Minister was quite happy to answer questions beyond the brief of his particular portfolio in respect of that primary question. I don't know that it's fair to seek to avoid answering the thrust of my question simply because it may, on narrow grounds, fall outside the warrant of the Minister of Environment.
I'll hear that because it's the question and answer have both been handled quite seriously. I'll hear the Honourable Dr. Nick-Smith.
The questions that I have answered are specifically about changes to the Resource Management Act, which are absolutely my responsibility. The latest question from the member was with respect to issues of the Building Act and the red, green and orange sticker system that are the responsibility of the Minister for Building and Construction.
I hear both members, and I wish I could satisfy the member because I acknowledge fully the care that the member has taken in preparing his questions, which are perfectly good questions. But I do accept the Minister's point that he can't answer specifically on issues outside his area of responsibility. I think there were good questions asked, and I think the Minister did his best to answer. I thought the Minister gave very genuine answers, attempts to answer the questions, and I regret I can't satisfy the member because his questions were good, but I think the Minister is right that he can't answer outside his portfolio responsibility areas. Question number 8, the Honourable Jim Anderson.